They said she was too quiet to matter, too slow to shift, too unnecessary to protect. So when survival demanded a price, they chose the one girl no one would miss. What they didn't know was that the enemy Alpha had already been waiting for her. Hey, quick question. How are you feeling right now? Thank you so much for being here. It truly means the world to me. I'm working toward 1,000 subscribers, and if Avalane's story is already pulling at your heart, please hit that subscribe button for Ella's Alpha Romance. Smash the like, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Alright, thank you. Now let's go back to what happens when the Omega they called worthless is delivered to the one Alpha who reveres her. Frostshade territory did not forgive softness. It was a land of thin sunlight and sharper wind, where the sky stayed the color of old steel and the snow never truly melted, only shifted, as if winter simply changed positions to watch you from a new angle. The pack lived like hunger was a law. Warmth was rationed. Food was measured. Even kindness had to justify itself, and in the center of that cold discipline moved Avalane Frostshade, quiet enough that most days, people forgot she had entered a room at all, not because she hid in the shadows, because the pack had trained itself to look past her. They did it casually too, as if her smallness was a comfort, as if overlooking her made the world simpler. She doesn't complain, someone would say when rations were served. She doesn't need much, someone else would add, and that was meant to sound like praise. Avalane would take her bowl with both hands and say thank you, because gratitude kept you alive longer than bitterness did. Her broth was always thin, her bread is always the smallest piece, her blanket is always the one with the most holes, and she learned not to stare at what others had. Staring invited questions, questions invited attention, attention invited cruelty. Still, there were days when humiliation slipped in anyway, the way cold slips beneath a door. On mornings when the young wolves trained in the open yard, shifting with loud pride and snapping laughter, Avalane was always given work that kept her at the edges, sorting dried roots, mending torn cloaks, scraping ice from stone steps. Never the center, never the circle, never the moment where a pack looked at you and decided you belonged. When she was 16, the other Omegas shifted for the first time, silver pelts flashing, new claws scratching pride into the frost. The entire pack watched, cheering, pounding fists and stamping boots, as if the air itself needed to celebrate their success. Avalane had stood among them with her hands folded, waiting, willing her blood to catch fire, willing the wolf inside her to rise. Nothing happened. Someone laughed, not loudly, but enough. Someone muttered, maybe she doesn't have one, and the worst part was not the words. It was the way no one bothered to correct them. After that day the pack stopped expecting anything from her, and expectation, she learned, was a kind of warmth too. Her father was there for all of it. Edrin Frostshade. He never struck her, never screamed at her, never called her worthless aloud. He was not dramatic enough to be a villain. His cruelty was quieter. He spoke to her the way one spoke to weather, acknowledging her presence, never engaging her will. Take this to the stores, he'd say, without looking at her face. Go to the hearth, bring back ash, leave the council hall. Not because she was in trouble, because she was unnecessary. Edrin had once been a hunter, back when his shoulders were broader, and his laugh still existed. But winters had taken that from him. One season at a time, the pack had taken the rest. Now he sat on the council, because someone had to count food and decide patrols and pretend control could beat the weather. And somewhere inside that duty lived fear, not fear of enemies, fear of failing, fear of being the alpha who let his pack starve. So he lived with tight hands and tighter decisions, and he did not meet Avalane's eyes, not because she disappointed him, because for years now, she had been right about things he could not afford to believe. Avalane's gift was not loud, not glowing, not celebrated. In Frostshade they called it the listening, but never with reverence. Listeners did not predict, they felt where the world narrowed, where paths closed, where something irreversible was about to happen. Avalane felt it as pressure behind her ribs, like someone pressing 2 fingers into the center of her chest. She felt it as a chill unrelated to winter. She felt it as a hush in her mind, as if instinct itself held its breath. She did not hear voices. She heard absence, and the pack hated absence, because it could not be ordered. As a child, Avalane would stop mid-step and whisper, "Something is wrong," and hours later, a hunting party would return empty-handed. A storm would arrive early, A wolf would break a leg on ice that had seemed safe. Avalon had begun to avoid her. After the third time she was right. Not because he believed she caused it, because he could not bear what it meant. If the listening was real, then control was a lie, and Frostshade survived on lies, the way it survived on fire, carefully and desperately. So Avalon learned to keep her gift folded tightly inside her, like a knife hidden beneath cloth, because every time she spoke her knowing out loud, the pack looked at her as if she had invited the darkness in, and she was tired of being blamed for storms. Still, the listening did not leave her alone. It pressed against her on quiet mornings, tightened during council gatherings, sometimes loosened for days, giving her the illusion of peace. Then one morning, it returned so sharply that Avalon had to grip the edge of a table to steady herself. Her breath caught, not from the cold, from certainty. Something was coming, not a storm, not a hunt failure, not a broken bone. This felt deliberate. Like fate had drawn close enough to breathe beside her ear. Avalon straightened slowly, her fingers numb, across the room. Her younger sister, Myrella, laughed at something a boy said, cheeks pink from the hearth. Myrella had shifted early. Myrella wore hope like a cloak. Myrella was promised a future. Avalon watched her and felt something ache behind her ribs that had nothing to do with the listening. She turned away before envy became visible. Envy was dangerous. That same day, Edrin summoned her, not to the hearth, not to the stores, to the council hall. Avalon entered quietly, the way she always did, and stood near the wall. The council sat in a half-circle, their faces lined with cold, their eyes hard with survival. The alpha of Frostshade, an older wolf named Ronark Stonehowl, leaned forward, forearms on his knees. The Blood Oak Dominion presses our border, Ronark said. Avalon felt the listening tighten, harder. Her mouth went dry. The council spoke of old rivalries, of trade routes, of the danger of war in deep winter. They spoke of tribute. They spoke of appeasement. Then Ronark said the words, as if he were announcing a weather change. We will offer them an unclaimed Omega. Avalon did not flinch. He had been trained not to. But something inside her went very still, as if her body had been waiting for the sentence to confirm what her blood already knew. Several council members turned their eyes, not to Myrella, not to the other Omegas, to Avalon, because the pack had already decided who could be spared. She has no mate bond, one elder said, not cruelly, simply fact. She doesn't shift, another added, almost relieved, as if uselessness made the choice easier. She'll survive, a third murmured, she always does. Avalon's humiliation did not come as a sharp blow. It came as a quiet settling, like snow covering a footprint. No outrage, no argument, no defense. No one even asked her name aloud, because everyone already knew who they meant. Avalon looked to her father. Edrin's hands were folded. His jaw was set. His gaze rested on the table, not her face. He did not argue. He did not protest. He did not say, "That is my daughter." His silence was a door closing, and Avalon understood, with a clarity so clean it almost felt peaceful. He had decided she was the safest thing to lose, not because he hated her, because he feared what keeping her would cost. Edrin finally spoke, voice flat as frost. She will go. Avalon's throat tightened, not because she wanted him to love her. She had stopped asking for that years ago, because she wanted just once, proof that her life was not simply a convenient sacrifice. But he did not look up. He told himself a softer lie instead. She will survive anywhere. She always does. Avalon felt the listening tighten again, like fate nodding. She lowered her gaze. Yes, she said softly, because even now, obedience was safer than grief. As the council dismissed her, Avalon stepped back into the corridor, and the cold struck her like a slap. She walked past the hearth where others warmed their hands, past the sleeping mats where wolves curled close in easy belonging. She went outside into the open air, where the snow creaked underfoot like old bones. The listening pressed behind her ribs so strongly she had to breathe through it. Impact. That was what it always meant. Impact without mercy. Avalon stood beneath the pale frost-shade sky, and realized she believed something with her whole body. She was being delivered as a warning, or a sacrifice. Not because she misfelt fate, because her life had trained her to expect the worst shape of it. Behind her, the great hall door opened. Edrin stepped out, cloak drawn tight, eyes fixed on the ground. Avalon waited, still quiet. giving him one last chance. He stopped a few feet away and spoke without meeting her gaze. Pack survival comes first. Aveline nodded once. She almost smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yes, she said. I've noticed. For the first time, Edrin's expression cracked, just slightly, like ice under weight, but he did not apologize. He did not reach for her. He did not say he was sorry. His voice dropped, rougher. Go inside. Prepare. Aveline turned away, and as she walked, the listening whispered its familiar lesson through her blood. Something would be taken. She just didn't know yet, whether it would be her life, or the lie that she was small. The journey south felt wrong to Aveline in a way she could not explain. Not dangerous, not violent, wrong in the quiet way, like stepping into a room where the air moved differently than it should. The Frostshade escort did not speak to her. They did not bind her wrists or shove her forward. They treated her like a fragile parcel, whose value had already been decided elsewhere. That hurt more than cruelty would have. Snow followed them for 2 days. On the third morning, the wind softened. By the fourth, the trees changed. The land grew dense with evergreens, their needles dark and heavy, bending instead of snapping beneath frost. Steam rose faintly from cracks in the stone road beneath the horses' hooves, curling upward like breath. Aveline noticed it immediately. Warmth, not imagined, not stolen from proximity. Real warmth, seeping from the earth itself. Her chest tightened, not with fear this time, but confusion. The listening did not loosen. If anything, it pressed harder, which made no sense. This was not the shape of sacrifice. The Blood Oak Dominion revealed itself slowly. The way a predator does not rush what it knows is already watching. Stone keeps rose from the land, dark and seamless, built into the earth rather than imposed upon it. Smoke drifted from chimneys in steady lines, not frantic ones. Guards stood at the gates, armored and alert, but they did not leer. They watched. Not her body, her presence. The escort announced her name, Aveline Frostshade. The gates opened without delay. No chains, no hesitation. Her escort stopped at the threshold. "This is as far as we go," one of them said. Aveline nodded. She had not expected farewell. As she crossed into Blood Oak territory alone, the listening surged so sharply she almost stumbled. Impact, her instincts warned. She braced herself. The courtyard was broad and clean, paved with dark stone that held heat beneath her boots. Wolves moved with purpose. Warriors, servants, guards, but none touched her. They parted. Not fearfully, deliberately. And at the far end of the courtyard stood a man who did not move at all. Evander Bloodoak, Alpha King of the Bloodoak Dominion. Aveline did not need anyone to tell her who he was. Authority settled around him like gravity. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark leathers edged with subtle sigils that marked rank without boasting it. His hair was pulled back, dark as wet bark, his face calm to the point of stillness. His eyes found hers immediately, and held, not possessive, not hungry, intent, as if she were a question he had waited a long time to answer. Aveline stopped walking. Instinct screamed at her to lower her gaze. She did not. Something in his expression, measured, controlled, almost relieved, held her where she stood. Evander took one step forward, then stopped. "You may come closer," he said. Not an order, an allowance. Aveline obeyed, each step cautious, ready for the moment restraint would break. It did not. "You crossed our border under duress," Evander continued, his voice even. "You will not be harmed here." Aveline blinked. That was not the script she had prepared for. "I was sent as an appeasement," she said carefully. "Or, as a warning." Evander studied her face as if weighing every word she did not say. "No," he replied. "You were sent because your pack could not see your worth." The listening pulsed violently at that. Aveline swallowed. "And here?" she asked. Evander's gaze did not waver. "Here," he said. "You will be treated with honor." Silence fell between them. Aveline waited for the next part. The interrogation, the conditions, the threat. None came. Evander turned slightly and gestured toward the keep. "You will be given chambers, warmth, food, rest." Aveline's mouth opened, then closed again. "I am not being questioned," she asked. A corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Not tonight. Her escort instincts screamed. Nothing in her life had taught her how to respond to mercy without a price attached. Evander seemed to understand. "You are safe," he said again. You may choose what you do with that later. Then he turned away, just like that. No command to follow, no guard dragging her forward. Evelyn stood in the courtyard, stunned, until a woman approached, older, with silver threaded through dark hair and eyes kind without being soft. This way, the woman said gently. I'm Thalia. Evelyn followed. Her chambers were nothing like what she had known. Stone walls that radiated warmth, thick furs layered on a wide bed, a table set with bread, stew and fruit that looked abundant, and in the far corner, a bath. A real one. Steam rose from it in slow curls, filling the room with the scent of herbs and heated stone. Aveline stopped dead. She stared at it. Then I looked at Thalia. Is this? She asked carefully. For one person? Thalia smiled. Yes. Aveline considered this. Her expression was serious, as if she were calculating risk. I have been lied to before, she said at last, but I am willing to risk it. Thalia laughed softly, not at her, but with her, and gestured again. I'll return later. When the door closed, Aveline remained where she was for a long moment. Then slowly, she stepped closer. She reached out, dipped 2 fingers into the water, warm, not an illusion, not temporary, real. Her knees weakened without permission. Aveline sank into the bath with a breath that shuddered out of her chest, the heat wrapping around her like something she had never been allowed to ask for. For the first time in years, her shoulders dropped, not because she felt safe, because she felt uncertain, in a way that did not hurt. That night, she slept deeply, no dreams of storms, no tightening in her chest. The listening remained, but quieter, as if listening itself. The next morning, she was given fresh clothing, soft, clean, whole. At breakfast, she sat at a long table across from Evander. Food was placed between them. Aveline ate carefully, slowly. When she reached for a second piece of bread, her hand hesitated mid-air. She glanced up, caught Evander watching, not her hand, but the hesitation itself. You may eat, he said. She blinked. Twice, she asked. His brow furrowed, genuine confusion crossing his face. Is this unusual? Yes, she answered honestly, but I am learning quickly. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Later, in the training yard, the pack watched her with new curiosity. After Evander issued a single order, she is to be treated with honor. Confusion rippled through the warriors. Calder Ashfang leaned toward Lucan Greyfang. So, Calder muttered, are we afraid of her? Lucan frowned. The Alpha reveres her. Calder exhaled. Then yes, probably. Aveline overheard none of it, but she felt something else for the first time. Not safe. Possibility. And far beneath that, something she had never considered before. That the tightening of fate she felt was not a blade descending, but a door opened. Blood oak did not feel like frostshade. That was the problem. Aveline woke each morning braced for loss, and found none waiting. The floors were warm beneath her feet. The hearths were lit before the chill crept in. The food arrived without counting. No one watched her bowl to see how much she took. It unsettled her more than hunger ever had. Because deprivation was predictable, kindness requires interpretation. She learned the rhythms of the keep slowly, the way one learns a new language, by listening before speaking. The Blood Oak warriors trained at dawn and dusk, their movements disciplined, their hierarchy unspoken but absolute. Orders were given once, never repeated. Evander watched everything, not from above. From within, he moved through the keep like a current, subtle and undeniable. Wolves straightened when he passed. Conversations shifted, arguments ended, before they reached him. And still, he never touched her. Not once, not by accident, not in passing, not even when others would have used proximity as a reminder of ownership. Aveline noticed. She noticed because she was used to being handled, guided by the arm, pushed by the shoulder, moved like an object that needed placing. Here, Evander always stopped a pace away, close enough that she felt his presence, far enough that the choice remained hers. They shared meals most days, seated across from each other at a long table, meant for councils and war planning. The warriors sat farther down, voices low, eyes flicking toward her with a mix of curiosity and unease. Aveline ate carefully. Even now, her hand hesitated before reaching for bread, for fruit, for anything that felt indulgent. Evander noticed everything she did not say. You watch the door, he observed once, not accusing. Why? Aveline swallowed. In Frostshade, she said slowly, only exits matter. Evander absorbed that without comment. Another time, he watched her fingers pause above a dish of roasted meat, steam curling upward. You may eat, he said again. She glanced at him. Without explanation, she asked. Yes, she nodded, as if committing the word to memory. Evander did not ask about her pack. Not at first. He did not interrogate her gift. He did not push. He waited. And waiting, Aveline learned, was a kind of power. The first time he named what she was, it happened without ceremony. They were walking the outer path of the keep, stone warmed by geothermal veins beneath the earth. Pines rose thick and dark beyond the walls, their scent sharp and clean. You are a listener, Evander said, as if noting the weather. Aveline stopped walking. Her spine went rigid. The words sat between them, like a blade laid flat on stone. In Frostshade, she said quietly. That is not a compliment. Evander did not turn to face her. Here, he replied. It is not an insult. She waited. Listeners, do not see the future, he continued. They feel consequences before making a choice. They sense where paths close. Aveline stared at him. No one had ever finished the thought. No one had ever framed it as a function, instead of failure. You have been trained to expect loss. Evander said, because historically you were only summoned before it. Her chest tightened. Yes, she said. That is correct. That is not the same as the truth, he replied. He turned to face her then. His gaze was steady, measured, almost careful. You do not bring ruin, Evander said. You recognize where it gathers. Aveline's throat closed. She looked away, before the emotion could show. After that, things began to change. Not loudly, subtly. Evander ordered her treated with honor, publicly, once. No chains, no intimidation, no precautions. The pack did not know what to do with that. Calder Ashfang was the first to say what everyone was thinking. So, he muttered to Lucan Greyfang, as Avalon passed.
Are we afraid of her?
Lucan frowned. The Alpha reveres her. Calder exhaled. Then yes, probably. Avalon felt it before she heard it. The shift. Eyes lingered longer. Gentiations hushed when she approached. Warriors stepped aside without being told. Not fear. Recognition. That unsettled her more than dismissal ever had. One afternoon she stood at the edge of the training yard, watching wolves spar with controlled brutality. A blade flashed too close. A snarl rose. Before Avalon could think, the listening tightened sharply. Warning, not doom. Left, she said quietly. The warrior moved without question. The strike missed by inches. The yard went still. Avalon's breath caught. Evander's head turned slowly toward her. He said nothing. Later, in the quiet of the keep's inner hall, Evander stopped her with a single look. You felt it, he said. Yes. You did not hesitate. No, good, he said. She frowned slightly. That was not instruction. It was an acknowledgement. That night, she dreamed of paths opening instead of closing. The listening remained, but it no longer screamed. It waited. As days passed, Evander began to seek her presence. Not constantly, not possessively, deliberately. He asked her to walk with him along the walls, to sit in the council chamber, not at the table, but close enough to hear. He never asked her to speak, but he listened when she did. Once, while reviewing patrol routes, Avalon leaned forward and traced a line on the map with one finger. The land tightens here, she said. Not yet. Soon. Evander altered the route, without question. No explanation given. The warriors noticed. So did the Frostshade delegation when they arrived. Weeks later, they entered Bloodokak, expecting chains. They found Avalon standing beside the Alpha King, warm, fed, upright. Her posture alone struck them silent. Ronick Stonehall's eyes widened. Messire Ella stared. Edrin Frostshade did not look up. Evander did. He addressed the delegation calmly, his voice carrying through the chamber. Avalon Frostshade is under my protection. The words landed like thunder. She is valued, he continued. She is rare, and she will not be treated as expendable in my territory. Avalon felt the listening shift, not tighten, align. At that moment, she understood. The listening had never warned her of mercy, only impact. It had followed motion, not meaning. Destiny had not been doomed. It had been redirected, and she had mistaken the shape of it, because her life had taught her to expect the worst. As the delegation withdrew, faces tight, pride bruised, Avalon stood very still. Evander turned to her. You may go, he said quietly. She hesitated. Thank you, she said. Instead, his gaze lingered on her for a heartbeat, longer than necessary. Later that evening, as the keep settled into silence, Evelyn became aware of Evander watching her, not predatory, not demanding, intent. You are staring, she said softly, without turning. I am assessing, Evander replied. She lifted one brow. Is the assessment dire? His voice lowered, extremely. Heat pooled beneath her ribs, different from the listening, dangerous in an entirely new way. Evander did not step closer. He did not touch her. He simply held her gaze, steady as stone, and Aveline realized something that unsettled her more than fear ever had. Being seen like this fully, without dismissal, was far more powerful than being ignored, and far more difficult to survive. The Frostshade delegation arrived at dawn. Their banners appeared first, pale against Bledoak's darker forest, followed by wolves who stood too straight and watched too carefully. They came beneath courtesy, not humility, beneath tradition, not apology. Aveline felt them before the horns sounded. The listening returned, heavy, deliberate, pressing behind her ribs like the land itself was bracing for impact. She stood in the outer courtyard, steam curling around her boots where warmth rose from the stone. In Frostshade, tension meant hunger. Here, it meant preparation. Evander joined her without sound. You feel it, he said. Yes, then speak. Old instincts stirred. In Frostshade, speaking during moments like this invited correction. Silence was safer, but Evander's gaze held no disappointment, only readiness. They will not accept this quietly, Aveline said. Not because they want me back. A faint curve touched her mouth, dry and restrained, but because they do not like being wrong. Evander's eyes sharpened. They will test boundaries. Yes, she replied. Soon. You are certain. I always am. He nodded once. Decision settled. Then you will stand counsel with me. The words landed harder than any insult Frostshade had ever given her. The great hall filled quickly. Maps lay open on the central table. Stones marked borders. Tokens marked force. Bledoak's council took their places. Calder Ashfang, Lucan Greyfang, Fenwick Moonthorn, Ronric Stonehowl, faces calm, unreadable. Opposite them stood Frostshade. Familiar faces, familiar cold. Seraphine stepped forward, voice even, reasonable. She is an Omega, unclaimed. We request her return. The listening surged. Evander stepped forward. His voice did not rise. She is not worthless, he said. She was never weak. She was never cursed. Silence fell like a held breath. Evander turned, not to Frostshade, but to Aveline. I revere her, he continued, unashamed, because she feels what others ignore, because her presence steadies my land, because power like hers does not howl, it listens. Something inside Aveline cracked, not pain, but understanding. Her gift had never lied to her. It had felt the change because it was real. She had mistaken destiny for doom, because no one had taught her what mercy felt like. The silence held. Then Aveline stepped forward, just one pace, not toward Evander, toward Frostshade. She did not raise her voice. I was quiet, she said calmly, because no one ever listened. I was careful, she continued, because mistakes were punished, and I was small, she finished, meeting her father's eyes, because you needed me to be. A murmur rippled through the hall. She turned slightly, not seeking permission, but I am not small here. Her father opened his mouth. Evander did not look at him. She has spoken, Evander said, evenly. You may leave. The Frostshade delegation withdrew, not shouted down, not threatened, but exposed. As the doors closed, Aveline remained still, and for the first time, she wondered, would she have become this powerful if they hadn't thrown her away? The pressure behind her ribs released fully. Destiny had not been doom, it had been redirection. She stood straighter. For the first time in her life, no one mistook her silence for absence. That night, the Dominion settled into quiet. Aveline stood on the balcony, forest breathing below. Evander joined her. You were never small, he said. She looked at him, warmth steady in her chest. No, she replied softly. I was just unseen. He set his hand near hers on the stone, close enough to choose, close enough to wait. After the Frostshade delegation left, nothing returned to how it had been before. It became steadier. The Bledoak Dominion breathed easier, as if the land itself had been waiting for something to settle into place. Patrols moved without urgency. Council debates shortened. Wolves slept through the night without pacing the walls. Evander noticed it. So did the pack. So did Aveline, though it took her longer to trust the feeling. She still woke up some mornings braced for hunger, her body expecting the old ache behind her ribs. But the ache never came. Food arrived without condition. Warmth did not disappear when she lingered too long by the hearth. Safety, she learned, was not a single moment. It was repetition, and repetition changed her. She began to speak more, still softly, still carefully, but without the instinct to apologize afterward. She attended council more often now, not seated at the table, but beside Evander, close enough to see the maps, close enough to feel the shift in the room when she inhaled. When she leaned forward, the room leaned with her. That realization unsettled her. One evening, as dusk settled thick and blue over the Dominion, Aveline stood in the inner corridor, watching torchlight reflect off polished stone. Evander approached without announcement, his presence registering before his footsteps did. "You are restless," he observed. "I am adjusting," she replied. He accepted that without correction. They walked together through the quieter passages of the keep, where the walls held warmth and the air smelled faintly of smoke and pine. Outside, snow drifted lazily, caught and melted by the geothermal heat beneath the stone. "You have not asked why," Evander said after a time. Aveline glanced at him. "Why do you revere me?" "Yes." She considered the question carefully. The listening stirred, not warning, not urging, waiting. "Because if I ask," she said, "I will have to decide what the answer means." Evander stopped walking. So did she. He turned to face her fully, his expression unreadable but intent. The corridor was empty. The quiet around them felt deliberate, like the world had stepped back a pace. "I have dreamed of you," Evander said. The words landed without force, not dramatic, not claimed, just spoken. Aveline's breath caught. "Dreamed," she repeated. "Yes." He did not move closer, did not reach for her. His restraint pressed harder than any touch could have. "For years," he continued, "before your pack ever crossed my borders, before they knew my name." Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. "In the dreams," he said, "you stood where the land narrowed, not to stop it, but to understand it. You were never afraid. You were listening." Aveline felt heat bloom beneath her ribs. Dangerous, unfamiliar. "You did not know me," she said. "I knew the shape of you," he replied. "The way some wolves know the sound of the forest before they enter it." Silence stretched between them. Then she asked the question she had been avoiding since the first night. "Why did you wait?" Evander's jaw tightened, just slightly. "Because claiming you before you chose would have made me no better than those who sent you," he said. The honesty of it struck her harder than the confession. "You are staring," Aveline said quietly, needing something lighter to steady herself. "I am assessing," Evander replied. She lifted a brow. "Is the assessment dire?" His voice lowered, extremely. The heat in her chest flared, sharp and bright. This was not the listening. This was something else entirely. Evander exhaled once, slow and measured. "If I touch you," he said, "it will not be casual." Aveline swallowed. "I would expect nothing less." Still he did not touch her. Not yet. That night, Aveline dreamed, not of storms or tightening paths, but of standing at the edge of something vast, warm wind at her back, the sense of being chosen without being trapped. She woke with her heart racing, and her skin warm beneath the furs, and for the first time in her life, she did not immediately feel ashamed of wanting more. Days passed. Evander sought her counsel openly now, not formally, not ceremoniously. He would pause beside her during map reviews, ask, "Does this feel closed to you?" And when she nodded, routes shifted, patrols changed. No one questioned it. Not anymore. One afternoon, the council chamber grew heated as senior warriors argued over border patrols. Voices rose. Hands slammed against stone. Aveline stood beside Evander, listening. The listening stirred, but gently this time, guiding rather than warning. She cleared her throat softly. The room fell silent. Aveline froze. "Oh," she said, after a moment. "That worked." Evander did not hide his amusement. "You may continue," he told the council calmly. "She has not finished thinking yet." Aveline leaned closer to him, murmuring, "Is this what authority feels like?" "Yes," he replied without looking at her. "Disconcerting at first." You'll adapt. Her lips twitched. Later, as the council dispersed, Calder Ashfang lingered. My king, he said carefully. May I speak freely? Evander nodded. You have been smiling more. Evander stared at him. Calder added quickly. Respectfully. Lucan Greyfang snorted from the doorway. The land is calmer. The wolves sleep better. And you, he gestured vaguely, are less terrifying. Aveline covered her mouth, failing to hide her smile. Evander exhaled once, slow and deliberate. Leave, he said. The warriors left immediately. He turned to Aveline. This will not be discussed again. She met his gaze, eyes bright. Of course, my king, she said solemnly. I would never mention it. His mouth twitched. The listening hummed softly. No warning. Not pressure. Harmony. And Aveline understood something new. She did not stand beside Evander because he protected her. She stood beside him because she balanced him. And that truth was more intimate than any claim. The authority did not announce itself. It arrived the way winter once had in Frostshade. Quiet, patient, undeniable. Aveline did not wake one morning, suddenly powerful. There was no ceremony, no declaration that marked the shift. Instead, it unfolded in smaller ways. In the way voices paused when she entered a room. In the way eyes turned toward her without prompting. In the way silence waited for her. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. Then she realized, coincidence did not repeat itself consistently. The council chamber had changed. Where once the air had been sharp with argument, it now carried a measured tension, as if the wolves inside understood that recklessness had consequences. Maps were no longer slammed onto the table. Hands no longer cut through the air with impatient gestures. They waited. For Evander, yes, but also for her. Aveline stood beside him, hands folded loosely, posture relaxed in a way that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier. The warmth beneath the stone steadied her feet. The listening stirred, not as warning, but as guidance, threading through her awareness like a quiet current. She no longer mistook it for fear. Today's discussion centered on the eastern border where Iron Moon scouts had been spotted too close for comfort. Voices rose briefly, old instincts flaring. Territory, pride, threat. Calder Ashfang argued for increased patrols. Fenwick Moonthorn countered with restraint. Lucan Greyfang watched, silent, weighing both. Aveline listened, not to the words, to the shape beneath them. She cleared her throat softly. The room fell silent. The sound startled her. Aveline blinked. Oh, she said after a moment. That worked. A ripple of restrained amusement passed through the room. Evander did not hide his own. You may continue, he said calmly, eyes still on the map. She has not finished thinking yet. Aveline leaned closer to him, lowering her voice. Is this what authority feels like? Yes, Evander replied without looking at her. Disconcerting at first. You'll adapt. She exhaled, something between laughter and disbelief. Then she spoke. The eastern pass feels closed, she said. Not now. Soon. If we push into it, something will give. And it won't be them. Calder frowned. You're certain? Aveline met his gaze without shrinking. Yes. Evander shifted the marker on the map without hesitation. Then we redirect, he said. No argument followed, no challenge. The decision was made. Aveline felt something settle inside her, not triumph, not pride, but alignment, as if a piece of herself she had kept folded away had finally found its place. After council, as the chamber emptied, Lucan paused near the door. You should know, he said gruffly, not meeting her eyes. This doesn't feel like obedience. Aveline tilted her head. What does it feel like? Lucan considered. Relief. He left without elaborating. News traveled quickly, not as gossip, but as certainty. Other packs noticed the change in Bloodoak's borders, not aggression, not weakness, but cohesion. Patrols moved with purpose. Supply lines stabilized, disputes settled before they escalated. The land responded. The listening told her so. Aveline walked the walls more often now, her presence no longer questioned. Wolves nodded as she passed. Some smiled, not nervously, not cautiously, but with something like respect. It unsettled her, because respect required maintenance, and she had spent her life surviving without it. One evening, as dusk deepened into indigo, Evander joined her on the outer wall. You are thinking too hard, he observed. Aveline huffed softly. I spent years thinking not at all. It feels irresponsible to stop now. Evander's mouth curved faintly. The pack is watching you, he said. She glanced at him. That was inevitable. They are learning how to follow without fear, he continued. That takes time. So does trust, she replied. Yes. Silence stretched between them, comfortable now. Then Evander spoke again. You could have left. Aveline frowned slightly. When? After Frostshade withdrew. After you were proven right. She considered the question. I could have, she agreed. But then I would still be reacting. And now I'm choosing. Evander studied her face, something like pride flickering in his eyes before being carefully banked. That choice, he said, has consequences. I know. Some will kneel, he continued. Others will resist. I know, she said again. And some, he finished quietly, will fear you. Aveline turned to face him fully. I am not afraid of that, she said. I am afraid of forgetting who I was. Evander held her gaze. You won't, he said. You listen too well. Far north, in Frostshade territory, Edrin Frostshade stood alone. Winter had deepened, frost creeping into the stone walls despite every effort to keep it at bay. Supplies ran thin, patrols returned uneasy, and then her name came back to him. Not whispered, not mocked, spoken with care. Aveline Frostshade, a messenger said. Eyes averted, advisor to the Alpha King of Bloodoak. Edrin said nothing. Later, when he was alone, he stood in the snow and stared at the frost-covered ground. May the cold be kinder to you than I was, he murmured. For the first time in his life, he listened, and understood how late he was. Back in Bloodoak, the choice Aveline had been circling, finally came due. An envoy arrived from Iron Moon, formal, respectful, edged with challenge. They requested terms, negotiation, recognition. Evander prepared to receive them. You will stand with me, he said. Not a question, Aveline nodded. During the meeting, when the Iron Moon envoy attempted to undermine her authority with polite dismissal, Evander did not intervene. He did not need to. Aveline met the envoy's gaze calmly. You may speak to me, she said, or you may leave. The room stilled. The envoy swallowed. He spoke to her. Later, as they walked the corridor together, Evander slowed. That was not destiny, he said. That was my choice. Aveline breathed out slowly. For the first time, she said, they feel the difference. Evander stopped walking. So do I, he turned to her. Then, not to claim, not to command, but to offer something heavier than either. Stand with me, he said. Not beneath, not behind, that behind. Aveline did not answer immediately. She listened, not to the tightening of fate, to the openness of it. Yes, she said, not because she was needed, but because she wanted to be. The night arrived without urgency. No horns sounded from the towers. No messengers ran the corridors with breathless warnings. No wolves paced the walls with restless steps. The Bloodoak Dominion slept. Aveline stood on the stone balcony beside Evander, wrapped in a heavy cloak that smelled faintly of pine and smoke. His cloak, though no one dared comment on that anymore. The warmth beneath the stone rose steadily, a quiet promise that cold would not claim this place tonight. Below them, the forest lay calm and deep. Snow drifted softly through torchlight, melting where it touched the living stone. Somewhere far off, a wolf called, not in alarm, but in contentment. Aveline listened, not with the listening, with herself. She had learned the difference. Evander rested his forearms on the railing, his presence solid beside her. He did not crowd her. He never did. The space he gave her had always been deliberate. Room to choose, room to stand, room to leave if she wished. That was how she knew she would not. The pressure behind her ribs, the warning she had once mistaken for doom, was gone now. In its place was clarity. Aveline exhaled slowly. Evander glanced at her. What troubles you? She hesitated, then answered carefully. I was thinking. He waited. If my old pack could see me now, she continued, eyes still on the land, standing here, warm-fed, listened to. She paused, searching for the right shape of truth. They would accuse you of stealing me. Evander's brow furrowed slightly. Did I? She considered that. The thin blankets, the bowls filled last, the way silence had been mistaken for emptiness. No, she said softly. You just stopped pretending I was small. Silence followed, not the kind that demanded explanation, the kind that honored truth. Then she added, almost thoughtfully, I believe this makes me their greatest mistake. Evander's mouth curved. Just slightly. Yes, he agreed. It does. She leaned into his side, surprising them both. The contact was natural now, unguarded. His arm settled around her shoulders without tightening, without possession, and inconveniently, she murmured, "Their loss." Below them, the Dominion breathed, steady, protected, whole. Earlier that day, the last of the envoys had departed. Iron Moon withdrew their scouts. Dark Howl redirected their patrols. Silvermane sent carefully worded messages of respect rather than challenge. No one tested Blowdoke's borders, not because they feared Evander, because they understood Avalyn. They had felt the shift, not of dominance, but of consequence. The kind that did not shout, the kind that did not rush, the kind that ignored. In the council hall, Avalyn stood beside Evander as equal, her voice shaping decisions that would guide the coming seasons. Warriors listened when she spoke. The elders paused. Maps shifted beneath her hands. She did not command. She influenced me, and the land answered. Later, as the hall emptied, Calder Ashfang bowed, not deeply, not formally, simply enough to acknowledge what had changed. Lucan Greyfang met her eyes and nodded once. Acceptance, not granted, recognized. Avalyn felt no pull northward. Frostshade faded into memory like a winter that had overstayed its welcome. She did not wish them harm. She did not wish them her mention. She wished them distance. Here she had found something rarer than power. She had found space to become. Evander turned slightly toward her now, his voice low. "You chose this." "Yes," she replied. "You were not given away." "No, you were not taken." "No." She looked up at him, steady and sure. "I arrived." His gaze held hers, something deep and unyielding, softening just enough to let her see it. "Then stand," he said. She already was. Far north, winter tightened its grip. Idrin Frostshade stood alone at the edge of his territory, the wind cutting through his cloak. The pack moved behind him, busy, strained, surviving. He heard her name again, not whispered, spoken with weight. Avalyn Frostshade, listener, advisor, the one Blowdoke followed. Edrin closed his eyes. He did not curse her. He did not claim pride. He bowed his head to the frost and whispered, "May the cold be kinder to you than I was." And for the first time, he listened, not to fear, but to consequence. Back in Blowdoke, the night deepened. Avalyn rested her head lightly against Evander's shoulder, the simple intimacy still surprising in its ease. Below them, the keep slept in quiet order. "Evander," she said softly. "Yes. I once believed destiny only arrived to take something." He did not interrupt. "I was wrong," she continued. "It came to move me." Evander turned his head slightly, his cheek near her hair. "And did it?" "Yes," she said. "Exactly where I needed to be." He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "If you stay." She cut him off gently, lifting her head to meet his eyes. "I am staying," she said. "Not because I am needed, but because I chose you." The words settled between them, heavy, deliberate, unbreakable. Evander's breath left him slowly. He did not claim her. He did not mark her. He did not cage her future with promises she had not asked for. He rested his forehead briefly against hers, a vow without words. Below them, the forest answered with stillness. Avalyn closed her eyes. She was no longer the Omega they had let go. She was the listener who had learned the truth of her gift. Not to predict endings, but to recognize when something was finally right. And somewhere between rejection and reverence, between silence and being heard, she had become something the world could no longer ignore. They had called her worthless, until the enemy Alpha showed the world she was the reason kingdoms learned to kneel.